Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. We're going to unpack the definitive Department of Justice investigation to understand exactly how the most heavily scrutinized inmate in America died in federal custody. It's basically the official anatomy of a failure.
It's the question that dominated news cycles all over the world, right? How on earth did Jeffrey Epstein take his own life while locked inside a highly secure federal prison? Well, to answer that, we really need to push past the rampant speculation. We're going to focus entirely on the stark, irrefutable facts of institutional negligence. We'll be looking strictly at what the rigorous official investigation uncovered at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York.
So this entire explainer is built on the findings of the Office of the Inspector General. They published this massive document in June of 2023. And honestly, what this report clearly exposes is just a profound collapse of the Bureau of Prisons safeguards. It paints a picture not of some cinematic, shadowy conspiracy, but of a catastrophic, multi-layered failure in basic correctional procedures.
Part 1. An inmate's high-profile arrival. Let's start by tracking Epstein's arrival at the facility in July 2019 and how the prison staff immediately recognized that he needed special handling. The timeline of his initial detention moves incredibly fast. On July 6, Epstein was arrested at an airport in New Jersey on federal sex trafficking charges. Literally, the very next day, July 7th, he was moved out of the general inmate population and placed into the Special Housing Unit, or the SU. Why? Well, specifically because of the massive media attention surrounding his case and his extreme notoriety among the other inmates. And by July 18th, a judge denied his bail, ruling him a danger to the community and a flight risk. So he was ordered detained pending trial.
You have to understand the stark contrast between his initial environment and where he ended up. The Special Housing Unit is not your standard cell block. The SHU is designed to securely separate vulnerable or high-profile inmates from the general population. Inmates there are locked down in a highly secure cell for about 23 hours a day just to guarantee their safety and the safety of the facility. It's meant to be the absolute most controlled environment possible.
Part 2. Warning Signs and Suicide Watch. Despite these super strict physical controls and the isolation of the SHU, the first major red flag popped up just weeks into his detention.
On the night of July 23rd, guards heard noises and actually found Epstein on the floor of his cell with an orange cloth around his neck. Now, at first, Epstein claimed his cellmate tried to kill him, but when he was evaluated later, he suddenly claimed he couldn't remember how he got the friction marks on his neck. Because of this incident, they immediately transferred him out of the SHU and put him on strict suicide watch, which requires constant observation, before eventually stepping him down to psychological observation.
Okay, so the absolutely crucial point here is what happened when he was cleared to return to the SHU a week later on July 30th. The MCC New York Psychology Department issued a mandatory written directive stating explicitly that Epstein needs to be housed with an appropriate cellmate. Look, this wasn't just a friendly suggestion. It was a strict order sent via email to over 70 staff members demanding he never be housed alone because of his risk profile.
Part 3. A cascade of failures. Let's fast forward to early August and see how this builds into a terrifying escalation of institutional negligence, where basically every single safeguard failed, one by one.
The first layer of failure was entirely technological. The video system recording the SHU completely failed on July 29th due to a catastrophic disk failure in their DVR2 system. This meant that while guards could still watch live feeds on their monitors, absolutely nothing was being recorded for about half the cameras in the facility. That includes the ones pointed right at the SHU common areas. Staff actually discovered this failure on August 8th, but inexplicably they just didn't repair it before Epstein's death. Then we get the second, and arguably the most fatal failure. This happened on the morning of August 9th. At 8:30 a.m., Epstein's cellmate was transferred out of the facility entirely. Even though the U.S. Marshal Service had notified numerous staff members the day before that this transfer was happening, absolutely zero action was taken to make sure Epstein was assigned a replacement. Staff completely ignored that mandatory psychological directive from July 30th, meaning Epstein was now completely alone. And it gets worse, because on that exact same day, August 9th, a federal court unsealed approximately 2,000 pages of highly derogatory documents related to Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell. 2,000 pages. These documents contained severe allegations and triggered just intense, massive media coverage. From a psychological standpoint, this unsealing created a huge potential trigger for an inmate who is already identified as being at risk. Compounding all these errors that evening, a supervisor explicitly violated Bureau of Prisons policy. Typically, all inmate calls have to go through a monitored and recorded system, for obvious security reasons.
But at 7 p.m. on August 9th, a unit manager allowed Epstein to make an unmonitored, unrecorded phone call from a secure area. While Epstein claimed he was just calling his mother, records show he actually called someone who he allegedly had a personal relationship with.
Part 4, the night of August 9th. This brings us to that fateful evening, where all of these systemic failures, the missing cellmate, the psychological trigger, the broken cameras, they all converged into a deadly window of opportunity.
By policy, guards in the SHU are supposed to conduct visual checks on inmates every 30 minutes and do official counts multiple times a night. It's the ultimate safety net. But the harsh reality uncovered by the investigation is that the 2 guards on duty entirely abandoned their posts. They didn't conduct a single 30-minute check after 10:40 p.m. They skipped the midnight, 3 a.m., and 5 a.m. counts completely.
Because of this severe, outright negligence, Epstein was left totally unmonitored for nearly 8 solid hours. He was locked alone in his cell, without a cellmate to raise an alarm. On top of that, a later search revealed he had been allowed to accumulate excess prison blankets, linens, and clothing in his cell, which he then used to create nooses.
The grim consequences of this missing oversight were discovered at 6:30 a.m. the next morning, August 10th. Guards finally arrived to deliver breakfast through the food slots. When Epstein didn't respond to their knocks, they unlocked the cell and found him unresponsive. Despite immediate CPR and a rapid transfer to a local hospital, he was pronounced dead shortly after.
Now, what makes this sequence of events even more shocking is the cover-up. The 2 guards on duty actually falsified the official prison records. They literally sat at a desk just outside the housing area and filled out count slips and over 75 separate entries on round sheets, fraudulently claiming they had been checking on the inmates all night. They deliberately created a fake paper trail to cover up the fact that they had been ignoring their rounds.
Part 5, the investigation's verdict. Look, naturally, this perfect storm of incompetence, broken cameras, and falsified records fueled some rampant public speculation. So we really need to look quickly and decisively at what the definitive physical and forensic evidence actually proved about what happened in that cell. The medical examiner concluded definitively that the cause of death was hanging and the manner was suicide. The autopsy noted a complete absence of defensive wounds. I mean, no marks on his hands, no broken fingernails, no debris under them, things you would absolutely expect to see if there had been a struggle or a homicide. Furthermore, investigators confirmed the heavy steel tier doors in Epstein's own metal cell door remained securely locked the entire night.
As the official DOJ OIG report boldly states, this was not some shadow conspiracy. It was, and I quote, a combination of negligence, misconduct, and outright job performance failures that contributed to an environment where he was basically provided with the opportunity to take his own life. These failures effectively deprived his numerous victims of their ability to ever seek justice through the criminal justice process.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to take away from this explainer. If the most highly scrutinized, high-profile inmate in America could slip through the cracks of these institutional safeguards simply because guards didn't walk their rounds and supervisors ignored psychological directives, how secure and accountable is the system for everyone else? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope this structured look at the facts brought some real clarity to a highly complex and tragic timeline.